Now, Jamie Blackett, former army officer, farmer, columnist, author, a lad o' perts, as we say around here. A Renaissance man, you might very well consider him. He's a farmer with plenty to say, and he joins me now. Jamie, apart from the obvious that Keir Starmer really can't see a group of people that he doesn't need to offend, to rile up somehow, to lose support amongst. Why has he picked on Britain's farmers?
Well, it's a very good question, George, and it's partly, I suspect, a cock-up and partly a conspiracy. As I was listening to your lead-in, clearly this Labour government is different to the ones before. It's very easy for me to come on here and sound very entitled as a farmer asking for special reliefs from inheritance tax. But the truth is that it's not just farmers, it's all businesses, all family businesses that are affected by this. And this Labour government, unlike the Wilson-Callaghan government or the Blair-Brown Labour governments, clearly has this view that it's not families that should own businesses, it's big multinational corporations, because of course they don't have to pay a death tax in every generation, but families do, unfortunately. And we've asked for the impact assessment from the Treasury on this new tax. They won't give it to us. I suspect it's because they didn't do it properly. And that's the cock-up part. They were saying before the election that they weren't going to touch APR. And then, of course, once they'd won the election, the budget comes along and they drop this bombshell on farmers. And it is a bombshell because, and this is the bit that they haven't thought through, the impact will be felt not so much by farmers like me, but by all the people that we employ. Because in order to save our farms from being broken up on our deaths, we will now have to spend a lot of money on life insurance. And that's going to rip money out of the rural economy and feed it into the City of London, into all the life insurance companies. And the money that I used to be able to spend on guys who had a couple of diggers maybe who would come and sort out our field drains for us, or the guy who comes and mends the dry stone walls, the chap who lays the hedges, the tree surgeon who works in the woods and thins the trees for us, there's going to be much less money available for paying them. So the rural economy, which is pretty much the gig economy, really, it's people, self-employed people who come and work on farms, that's all going to be really badly affected. This coming on top of the reduction in subsidies, the extra national insurance that employers now have to find, all these things are going to tip the rural economy into recession. And I don't think that the government has done a proper impact assessment. We know from DEFRA that they told the government, and they didn't know about this until the day before the budget apparently, that 66% of farmers were going to be affected. But the Starmer's going around saying that only 25% are going to be affected, which is what the Treasury are telling him. And clearly, that's not joined up government. They haven't thought it through. And the impact is also going to feed into higher food prices, because I'm going to need a lot more money for my milk now, because my cost of production is going to have to include some life insurance, which is, in my case, at my age, is going to be quite expensive, in order to keep going into the next generation, to stop the farm being broken up. So that's the problem, really. And for farmers who are older, there are a number of families where the multi-generational, 2-3 generations working in the farm. The older generation still owns the farm. They may be 80. They've got absolutely no chance of getting life insurance. So when they die, the farm gets broken up and the business goes. People perhaps get made unemployed. And so this policy is not a socialist policy. It's a crony capitalist policy. And it's going to affect some of the poorest in society in the countryside.
The reason that we pay subsidies and so on for agriculture is because of the need for food security. We have to be able to feed ourselves in extremis. We cannot, as I suppose theoretically we could, rely on imports, change our eating habits, import insects from the United States and grow to love them. But because we want to live how we lived, we have to take care of farming so that we can remain independent and food secure. If this goes through and the pattern of farm ownership radically changes, farms are broken up, the children don't inherit the farm, they go off and leave the land altogether. The land's still going to be there. It's going to be bought up by the big corporations, like it has been in the United States, like it has been in many other countries in the world. Isn't that correct?
I think that is right, George. I mean, it's perhaps what would happen, for example, if my farm, God forbid, was broken up as a result of this. The first thing that would go probably would be the farm workers' cottages, which would be sold off to rich retirees as second homes and retirement homes, so that farm workers in future would have to maybe commute in from a town, and there would be fewer homes for working people in the countryside, either as tied cottages or to rent. The next thing that would go would be outlying fields that would perhaps be sold off as pony paddocks, again, to wealthy people who've moved into the countryside, and they would be lost to agriculture and to food production forever. And then if the whole farm had to be sold, then yes, you're right, probably it would be bought by some institutional investor who would perhaps never even come here. And I know that because it happened to my family in the 1970s. We had a death duties problem. We sold most of the farm to an insurance company and rented it back. So we went from being owner occupiers to being tenants. I managed then to buy it back 20 years ago from the institutional investor who never even came here, treated it purely as an investment, never put any money into it. And I was able to buy it back. And because, ironically, I've gone from being a tenant to an owner-occupier, we now face a huge cost of lawyers and accountants and life insurance to stop that happening again and allow it to go into the next generation. And as I've said, that the knock-on effect of that is that the maintenance budget is going to have to be cut. We're probably only going to be able to do emergency repairs, and all that money that feeds into the circular rural economy is going to disappear into the City of London. So I'm really angry about this sort of crony capitalism masquerading as socialism.
I saw one of Starmer's chief cheerleaders, former Blair aide John McTernan, formerly of our parish, on Channel 4 News. He said, "We can do to the farmers what Thatcher did to the miners. We do not need this industry." It was an extraordinary claim, to make, extraordinary arrogance, extraordinarily vicious. But are the farmers ready for the fight?
Well, I think we definitely are. And whatever Mrs. Thatcher did to the miners, farmers certainly never did anything to the miners apart from feed them. And we are really angry about this because I don't think the government has thought it through. Had they warned us about it and consulted with the NFU, as they normally do on policy, we could have ended up with a sensible policy that might have raised a bit more tax from farms, but would not have been existential and damaging to the rural economy. And so I think, you know, we already, there are various sanctions available to us. We've already stopped those people who do it. I don't actually, but any farm that takes sewage cake onto their farm to get rid of it, to plough it into the land, they've stopped doing that. So the sewage is going to pile up in the water companies. The government's going to have to deal with that. There have been tractor protests and likely to be blockades of ports. Personally, I think that's a bit premature to be doing that because we have public sympathy at the moment. And if we start blocking motorways and things, then I'm worried that we may lose that. I hope that we can negotiate with the government. And I don't want to get to a situation where the government doesn't have any ladders to climb down because, you know, those positions become so entrenched. So we're going on a peaceful march on Tuesday in Whitehall to try to put our point across. But if they don't listen, and the signs are they're not going to listen, then yes, of course, farmers, we control 70% of the landmass of this country, and it wouldn't be very difficult for us to bring the whole country to a standstill. I very much hope that that doesn't happen. But you know, this is we are standing square on this, particularly with those farmers, as I said, who are in their 70s and 80s, who don't have the option, which hopefully I have, of taking out heavy life insurance policies and things to do anything about this. I mean, they are going to lose their farms. There is no doubt about that. When they die, the next generation that will see their farms broken up. And that can't be allowed to happen.
Captain Jamie Blackett, on parade on Tuesday in Whitehall. We'll be there, the Workers' Party and the farmers together. Thanks for joining us on the Mother of all talk shows.